God says, your soulmate is trying to find you, and the place where they are standing right now would shock you. This message is not appearing in your life by accident. Something inside you has been tired for a long time. You kept smiling while carrying silent battles nobody understood. You kept praying, hoping, waiting for clarity. Yet deep inside, your spirit still felt unsettled. But tonight, heaven wants you to hear this clearly. Your waiting season was never wasted. There is someone connected to your destiny whose heart is being pulled toward you by God Himself. They tried to ignore it. They buried themselves in work, pressure, responsibilities, and distractions. But the feeling never disappeared. In quiet moments, they feel it again. Late at night, they sense it again. A strange pull, a deep knowing that someone they have not met yet is already changing their life. And here is the shocking truth. The place they are in right now does not match the future God prepared for them. They are surrounded by false peace. Their environment looks stable on the outside, but inside, their soul feels trapped. It may be a job, a city, a routine, or a life that slowly drains them every single day. God allowed them to stay there long enough to realize that comfort without purpose becomes a prison. And the same thing has been happening to you. That is why certain conversations feel empty lately. That is why old routines no longer satisfy your spirit. That is why you feel emotionally distant from things that once distracted you. God is preparing you for a new season. C.S. Lewis once wrote in Mere Christianity that if we discover nothing in this world can truly satisfy us, it may be because we were made for something greater than this world. Right now, heaven is moving pieces behind the scenes. Timing is shifting. Doors are quietly opening. A hidden chapter connected to your future has already begun. If this message is speaking directly to your spirit, type, "I receive this" in the comments and tell me where you are watching from. Because what God is about to reveal next will explain why your soul has felt restless for so long. There is a reason your spirit has felt exhausted lately. Even while your life continued moving forward on the surface, God wants you to understand that this is not ordinary emotional fatigue. This is what happens when a season in your life begins to expire while you are still trying to survive inside it. You kept adapting to environments that no longer carried peace for your soul. You stayed inside conversations that left you feeling empty afterward. You continued showing up for people while secretly feeling disconnected from yourself. There were mornings when you woke up without excitement, and nights when you prayed but felt as though heaven remained silent. But God's silence has never meant God's absence. Sometimes the Lord works most powerfully in seasons where nothing appears to be changing. And the same thing is happening right now with the person connected to your destiny. They are living in a place that slowly drains them emotionally and spiritually. Everything around them may look stable from the outside, but deep within, they know they no longer belong there. They are trying to carry responsibilities while their soul quietly collapses under the weight of a life that no longer fits who they are becoming. God is using that discomfort to awaken them. Because some people only begin searching for truth after comfort stops satisfying them. I remember a season in my own life when I begged God for peace. But instead of making me comfortable, He began tearing apart the things that were keeping me spiritually trapped. At the time, I thought my life was falling apart. Looking back now, I realize heaven was redirecting me before I wasted years inside a place I was never meant to remain in forever. And perhaps that is exactly where you are right now. You are not losing your mind. You are being separated from an old version of yourself. C.S. Lewis once wrote in Mere Christianity, "If I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world. There are empty places inside the human heart that temporary distractions can never heal. That ache inside you was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to lead you closer to God's purpose for your life. Before heaven brings the right person into your path, God often removes your dependence on the wrong things first. That is why certain routines feel lifeless now. That is why shallow relationships no longer satisfy your spirit. That is why your soul has become more sensitive lately. God is preparing both of you through transition. Do not fear the discomfort you have been feeling. This is not the sound of your life collapsing. This is the sound of an old chapter closing so a new one can finally begin. And what God is about to reveal next will show you why none of these changes were ever random. And now God wants you to understand something most people never recognize until it is too late. The place where your soulmate is right now is not random. It is not merely a location on a map. It is a spiritual transition point. A place where God allowed them to remain long enough for every false layer to begin collapsing. They may be living in a crowded city while feeling deeply alone every night. They may be working in a career admired by others while secretly feeling their souls slowly dying in silence. They may be surrounded by noise, conversations, responsibilities, routines, and expectations. Yet inside, they already know their current life no longer reflects the person God created them to become. The Lord kept them there not to destroy them, but to awaken them. Because some people only begin seeking truth after false comfort loses its power over them. And this is why the message you are hearing right now carries such urgency. They can no longer pretend everything is fine. What once made them feel secure has started feeling like chains. Places that once brought stability now leave them emotionally exhausted. There are nights when they sit alone, feeling as though their life has become a room without windows. They keep asking themselves why everything around them still looks the same, while their spirit feels completely different. And it is in that exact moment that God begins pulling them toward you. C.S. Lewis once wrote in The Problem of Pain, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. Sometimes discomfort is heaven's way of waking up a soul that has been asleep inside old routines for too long. Your soulmate is going through that awakening now. They are beginning to realize they have spent too much of their life fulfilling the expectations of others while ignoring the deeper calling God placed inside them. They feel something approaching, a shift, a meeting, a door they are no longer strong enough to ignore. And the most frightening part is this: deep inside, they already know that if they remain where they are, they will slowly lose themselves. Can you feel it too? That strange sense that someone is spiritually moving closer to your life, even though you have not seen them yet. If you feel this message in your spirit, type aligned in the comments right now. Because when God begins synchronizing two destinies, the soul recognizes it before the eyes ever do. And listen carefully to what comes next, because your soulmate is approaching the moment where they can no longer endure the place they are living in now. Your soulmate is reaching a dangerous point in their life now, because the version of themselves they have been pretending to be is beginning to collapse. God is breaking apart the false stability they once depended on. The routines that used to comfort them now feel unbearable. The places that once felt familiar now feel emotionally cold. Every day they wake up with the growing realization that they cannot keep living disconnected from their true purpose. And this shift did not happen overnight. Heaven has been working on them quietly for a long time. Little by little, God has been removing peace from places where they were never meant to stay permanently. That is why they feel restless, even in moments that should feel successful. That is why they feel lonely in rooms full of people. Their spirit has outgrown the life they built before they fully awakened. Some nights they sit in silence, wondering why everything feels so heavy lately. They replay old decisions in their mind. They question why their heart keeps pulling them towards something unknown. But what they do not fully realize yet is this: God is dismantling an old identity before leading them into a new season. Sometimes the Lord allows a person to become uncomfortable because comfort is the very thing keeping them spiritually asleep. I remember a season where I begged God to rescue me from confusion. But instead, He removed every false source of security I had been leaning on. Relationships changed. Plans failed. Doors closed unexpectedly. At first, I thought heaven had abandoned me. Later, I realized God was isolating me before redirecting me. And perhaps your soulmate is walking through that same wilderness now. They feel disconnected from the environment around them because their spirit already senses they are about to leave it behind. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Pain insists upon being attended to." And that is exactly what is happening here. The pain they tried to ignore has become too loud to silence anymore. They can no longer distract themselves from the truth. They are beginning to understand that staying where they are may feel safe, but it is slowly draining the life out of them. God is exposing the emptiness of everything that once kept them trapped. The frightening part is that deep inside, they already know a major change is approaching. They feel it when they wake up. They feel it during long drives, quiet nights, and random moments when their thoughts suddenly drift toward a future they cannot fully explain. Heaven is preparing them to move, not only emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally. The old version of their life is losing its grip, and while God is pulling them out of hiding, He is also preparing you, because divine connections are never built on accident. They are built through surrender, refinement, and timing. So do not fear the shaking happening around your life right now. Sometimes God tears apart what is temporary, so He can finally reveal what was eternal all along. And what happens next will explain why your spirit has recently become more sensitive than ever before. And while God is shaking the life of your soulmate, something is also happening inside you. This is why you have not felt like yourself lately. Your emotions have become deeper. Your spirit has become more sensitive. Things you once ignored now affect you strongly. You notice certain signs repeatedly. Certain memories return without warning. Some nights you feel an unexplainable heaviness, while other nights you suddenly feel hope for no visible reason at all. Listen carefully. This is not confusion. This is spiritual synchronization. Heaven is aligning two lives at the same time. God is preparing both hearts before the meeting ever takes place. That is why your soul feels restless. You are sensing movement before your eyes can see it. There are moments lately when you feel disconnected from the world around you because your spirit is beginning to reject environments that no longer match your future. Conversations feel empty faster than before. Noise exhausts you. You crave peace more than attention. You crave depth more than temporary excitement. That is not weakness. That is growth. God often separates a person emotionally from an old season before physically moving them into a new one. C.S. Lewis once wrote in Mere Christianity, "God cannot give us peace and happiness apart from Himself because it is not there." And perhaps this is why so many things that once distracted you no longer satisfy you now. Heaven is teaching your soul to stop depending on temporary comfort and start depending on God's presence instead. I remember a season in my life when I felt spiritually unsettled for months. Nothing looked wrong externally, yet internally I felt as though my soul was searching for something deeper. I tried to distract myself with routines, achievements, and constant movement, but the emptiness remained. Looking back now, I realize God was creating space inside me before introducing a new chapter I could not yet see. And this may be exactly what is happening to you right now. Your spirit is making room. Your heart is being refined. Your discernment is becoming sharper. That is why you suddenly notice red flags faster. That is why certain people feel draining instead of comforting. God is increasing your sensitivity because you are approaching a season where discernment will matter deeply. And here is something important you need to do starting tonight. Before you sleep for the next 3 nights, sit quietly with God for a few minutes. Turn off the noise around you. Write down the fears, attachments, and emotional burdens you need to surrender. Then read Isaiah 43 slowly and pray for clarity instead of control. Do not ask heaven to force answers before your spirit is ready to carry them. Ask God for alignment. Ask Him for peace that is rooted in truth, because something is changing beneath the surface of your life already. And there is still one final battle your soulmate must overcome before the path between you fully opens. There is one final battle happening inside your soulmate right now, and it is more intense than anyone around them realizes. They are no longer fighting against circumstances alone. They are fighting against the fear of becoming the person God is calling them to be. Because transformation sounds beautiful until it begins demanding sacrifice. Right now, they are standing between 2 versions of their life. One feels familiar, predictable, safe. The other feels uncertain, deeply spiritual, and impossible to ignore. And this is where the real warfare begins. Many people believe the greatest fear is pain, but that is not true. Some people become so accustomed to surviving in broken environments that healing itself begins to terrify them. Your soulmate is starting to understand that if they continue holding on to the life they have outgrown, they will slowly lose the part of themselves that still believes in purpose. They feel trapped between comfort and calling, between routine and destiny, between what is easy and what is eternal. And every single day, the tension grows stronger inside them. There are moments when they almost convince themselves to stay where they are. They tell themselves it is more practical, more responsible, more realistic, but deep within, their spirit refuses to settle anymore. God keeps interrupting their peace. Small signs appear everywhere. Conversations suddenly hit differently. Certain words pierce their heart unexpectedly. Even silence has started speaking louder to them than noise. Because heaven is dismantling every excuse that once kept them spiritually asleep. I remember a season in my own life where God kept closing doors I desperately wanted to reopen. At first, I resisted it with all my strength. I kept asking God why everything felt unstable. But later, I understood something life-changing. Sometimes the Lord removes what is familiar, because familiar things can quietly imprison a person for years. Some people are not afraid of losing pain. They are afraid of losing what pain made familiar. And perhaps your soulmate is finally reaching the moment where they can no longer live inside emotional captivity disguised as stability. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "There are far better things ahead than any we leave behind. But walking toward those better things requires surrender. It requires trust. It requires the courage to release an old identity before the new one fully appears." And that is exactly what your soulmate is struggling with right now. Part of them already knows their current season is ending. Part of them already senses that God is redirecting their path towards something sacred. Yet fear still whispers questions into their mind. What if they fail? What if they lose everything familiar? What if the future feels harder than the present? But God did not bring them this far to abandon them in confusion. Heaven is preparing them for movement. Real movement. Emotional, spiritual, physical. The chains around their spirit are weakening. The false peace they depended on is collapsing. And soon, the fear that once controlled them will no longer be strong enough to keep them standing still. Have you ever stayed somewhere God already told you to leave? Have you ever felt your spirit outgrow a season while your heart was still afraid to move forward? If this message is speaking directly to your soul, type "let go" in the comments right now. Because once surrender begins, everything starts accelerating. And the moment surrender finally begins, everything starts moving faster than expected. This is the season where heaven quietly starts aligning what fear once delayed. Your soulmate is entering a phase where confusion no longer controls them the way it used to. Something inside them has shifted. The internal resistance is weakening. The excuses are losing power. And for the first time in a long while, they are beginning to feel clarity instead of emotional survival. God is no longer simply shaking their old life. He is repositioning their future. This is why strange coincidences have started appearing around them lately. Conversations suddenly feel meaningful. Random moments carry unusual emotional weight. Delays that once blocked them begin disappearing without explanation. It is as if invisible doors are quietly unlocking one after another. Because when divine timing begins moving, even ordinary events start carrying spiritual significance. Your soulmate is beginning to notice that life itself no longer feels stuck. Something is pulling them forward now. Not with chaos, not with pressure, with certainty. They are starting to realize that the peace they have been searching for cannot be found by staying where they are emotionally trapped. Heaven is creating movement around them. Schedules shift unexpectedly. Plans begin changing. Certain people slowly fade into the background. Priorities rearrange themselves naturally. And the most important part is this: they are no longer resisting the process the way they once did. God is preparing them to move physically toward the future. He has already prepared spiritually. I remember a season in my life where everything suddenly began changing at once after years of feeling delayed. Opportunities appeared from nowhere. Connections formed unexpectedly. Doors I had struggled to force open suddenly opened without effort. At first, it overwhelmed me. Later, I realize something powerful when God's timing arrives. Acceleration replaces frustration. What once felt impossible starts unfolding with unusual peace. And that is exactly what is beginning to happen here. Your soulmate is moving out of survival mode and into alignment. C.Z. Lewis once emphasized through his writings that God often prepares people slowly so they can carry blessings correctly when the moment finally arrives. And now, the preparation season is beginning to turn into movement. This connection is no longer living only in spiritual potential. It is moving toward reality. Heaven is arranging details neither of you can fully see yet. The remarkable part is that this meeting will not feel forced when it happens. It will feel strangely natural, familiar, peaceful. Your spirit will recognize something before your mind fully understands it. Because this connection was never built merely on emotion. It was built through timing, surrender, healing, and divine orchestration. And while your soulmate is being guided closer to you, something inside you is also changing. You may notice yourself feeling calmer lately, more detached from chasing, more focused on protecting your peace. That is not emotional numbness. That is readiness. God is teaching you how to receive instead of force, how to discern instead of cling, how to trust instead of panic. And listen carefully now, because what comes next is the moment where everything shifts from preparation into recognition. And when this meeting finally happens, it will not feel like two strangers crossing paths for the first time. It will feel like recognition, like something inside your spirit suddenly becoming still after a long season of searching. The world around you may appear ordinary in that moment. There may be no dramatic music, no supernatural sign falling from the sky, no loud announcement from heaven, but deep within, something will shift permanently, because your soul will recognize what your mind cannot yet fully explain. God did not build this connection on fantasy. He built it through preparation, through broken seasons, through prayers whispered in loneliness, through nights where both of you felt abandoned while heaven was secretly aligning every detail. And this is why the meeting will feel familiar instead of forced. Your soulmate will not awaken chaos inside you. They will awaken clarity. There is a major difference. Many people mistake emotional intensity for destiny, but real alignment carries peace. It carries truth. It carries the strange feeling that something eternal is touching your life. The connection will not tempt you away from God. It will draw both of you closer to Him. That is how you will know this is different. The world teaches people to chase chemistry, excitement, obsession, and emotional highs. But heaven values something deeper, spiritual recognition. Your soulmate will not complete your identity because only God can do that. Instead, they will walk beside the healed version of you that God has been shaping through every painful season you survived. And the same is true for them. They are not arriving as someone perfect. They are arriving as someone transformed. Someone who has already fought private wars that nobody else saw. Someone who understands what it means to lose peace and finally value truth above comfort. I remember meeting certain people in my life who felt strangely familiar from the very beginning. Not because we knew each other before, but because our spirits recognized something deeper than words. Conversations flowed without performance. Silence felt safe. There was no need to force connection because peace was already present. And that is the kind of encounter heaven is preparing here. See, Lewis once wrote, friendship is born at that moment when one person says to another, "What? You too, I thought I was the only one." And perhaps that is exactly what this meeting will feel like. Not simply romance, but recognition. Two people realizing they were both being guided through separate storms toward the same destination all along. Your spirit will feel understood in ways you stopped expecting from this world. The walls around your heart will no longer feel necessary. Fear will begin losing its grip, not because another human suddenly saved you, but because God finally brought alignment into a place that once carried confusion. And before this message ends, there is one final truth heaven needs you to understand, because the next season of your life will require more trust than fear. And now, before this message ends, heaven needs you to understand one final truth. The greatest miracle in this story is not merely that your soulmate is coming closer. The greatest miracle is who you are becoming while God prepares the meeting. Because there was a time when you would have settled for attention instead of alignment. There was a season when loneliness could have pushed you into the wrong hands simply because you were tired of waiting. But look at what God has done inside your spirit. You survived betrayal without becoming bitter. You survived confusion without completely losing faith. You survived seasons where nothing made sense. Yet somehow, the voice of God kept pulling you forward one step at a time. And now, heaven is bringing you into a chapter where fear no longer gets the final word. Your waiting season is not ending because you forced it to end. It is ending because divine timing has finally aligned with spiritual readiness. This is why God refused to let certain doors stay open. This is why some people disappeared from your life without explanation. This is why delays kept happening even when you prayed desperately for immediate answers. The Lord was protecting your future from premature connections. Some relationships were never rejected because you were unworthy. They were removed because they could not carry where God is taking you next. And now, your spirit is finally learning something powerful. Peace is more valuable than attention. Obedience is more valuable than temporary comfort. Alignment is more valuable than emotional obsession. C. is. Lewis once wrote, "There are better things ahead than any we leave behind." And tonight, heaven is asking you to believe that fully. Stop chasing what God already removed. Stop reopening doors heaven closed with mercy. Stop begging for clarity while ignoring the peace God has already placed inside your spirit. Your soulmate is not being guided toward you so you can worship another human being. They are being guided toward you so both of you can walk deeper into the purpose God prepared before either of you understood the journey. This connection is not an idol. It is an assignment. It is a reminder that God still writes stories filled with restoration, healing, and divine timing, even in a world full of disappointment. And listen carefully now. Because this matters deeply, do not let fear sabotage the season heaven is opening for you. The enemy often attacks hardest right before breakthrough. Doubt may whisper that nothing will change. Delay may try convincing you that you were forgotten. But God has not abandoned your story. Heaven has been moving behind the scenes this entire time. Every closed door, every painful goodbye, every lonely night, every uncomfortable transition was preparing you for a future your current self could not yet fully carry. So tonight, surrender your timeline to God again. Release the need to control every outcome. Let heaven lead what human effort could never force. Pray for discernment. Pray for wisdom. Pray for peace that remains steady even before answers arrive. Because something sacred is unfolding now. Your life is entering a new season. And when this meeting finally happens, it will not feel like fate interrupting your story. It will feel like God revealing why every painful chapter had to happen exactly the way it did. If this message spoke directly to your spirit, type God is aligning my path in the comments. And remember this before you leave tonight: some meetings are arranged by people, but some are arranged by heaven.